Hello everyone, welcome to the new video. Today in this video, we are going to develop one fully functional employee management system using Python, and we will use MongoDB as our database. So if you follow the entire video from start to end, you will learn how can you develop one decent API system using Python Flask, and also you will get knowledge on the MongoDB. How can we update data, delete data, insert data, or fetch data in MongoDB using Python. So without any further ado, let's get started. So this is our requirement, that what we are going to develop. So let me just open it in a readable way so that you guys will understand. Okay, so this is our goal, that what we are going to develop. So there should be one API base endpoint, which is /API/employee, and it should be able to do these 3-4 HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete. So get will be used for fetching data, post will be used for inserting data, put will be for updating any data, and delete will be for, yeah, as the name suggests, we will be deleting the data. Now how these methods will work? It said that when a request is made to only /API/employee, it should return list of employees. Means it will return all the employee list. Okay, and if we specify the employee ID in parameter with the endpoint, then it will show me data only for that particular employee. If nothing is given in the employee ID, or any employee ID is given which data doesn't exist in the MongoDB, then it will return 404 not found. Okay, for post, again we will be hitting this same endpoint with the post method, and we have to enter a JSON body like this to enter the new set of employee or employees, and upon successful insertion it should return me 201 created status code. Fine. For put, in the endpoint we will be putting the employee ID, okay, and which will specify that for which employee ID we want to update some data, and then we have to enter the request body, that I will show you how to do it for a put request, and then according to that the data will be updated. And for delete, we will just mention the employee ID and it will delete it. That's it. Okay, so these are some error handling thing, basic stuff. Okay, we'll be able to handle them properly. Okay, so let's get started. So for doing that, we need some prerequisites to be installed. So these are first of all, you should have Python. Of course, we are going to develop. For development purpose, we should have a MongoDB server. Now you don't need to purchase anything. We will install, community server for our development purpose, and we need Mongo Compass, which is a UI client for interacting with the database, and we need some libraries, like we need some Python libraries. These are Flask, which is the API framework for Python, and another will be PyMongo, which will be our ORM for MongoDB. That means it's the library by which we can make a connection with MongoDB and just do CRUD operation there. Okay. Now for installing Python, simple, you just have to go to python.org and just download Python, whatever latest version is available. Okay, and for MongoDB Compass, you have to go to this link from where we can download the community edition. So I'll provide all the links in the description. So for Windows machine, you have to download the MSI, or else you can also choose your operating system where you want to download. And the another software was Mongo Compass or MongoDB Compass. If you install this MSI, it will install both the community server as well as the Compass, so you don't need to go anywhere else to download this separately. Okay, and Python libraries, okay, we will be installing it. That's fine. So in my case, I have already configured the MongoDB. So this is the Compass, and currently I am logged into my local session. Okay, because in my computer is acting as a server where MongoDB is installed. As you can see here, localhost 27017. So this is the by default port used by MongoDB, and currently I have some default databases. Anyways, will not be interacting with them. Okay. So before starting, make sure that your Mongo server is up and running. So once you install and once you open Compass for the first time, it will pop you up, to establish the connection, and you just have to click on connect, and it will be able to connect with the local MongoDB install. Okay. Now, before starting, let's open the terminal. Here in this case, by default, I am using PowerShell. You can use Bash, you can use command prompt. That's up to you. Before that, we have to create a virtual environment for our code. So in Python, it is very important. Whenever you are building a project, it's a good practice to create a virtual environment. Okay. So whatever dependencies we need for our this project, they will be binded inside our virtual environment what we are going to create. So in Windows system, for creating a virtual environment, we need this command, python -m venv, which stands for virtual environment, and let's call it employee data management. Okay. And we'll click enter. Now it will create some dependencies. Okay, it's okay, let's just ignore these errors. So fine, we have created it. Now we have to activate it. So as I am using PowerShell, if you open your virtual environment, if you go to scripts, you will find that for activating our virtual environment, we have batch script, we have some shell script, and we also have the PowerShell script. So as I am using PowerShell, I have to execute this ps1 script. So for that, I'll navigate to that folder, and I will execute this ps1 script. After that, my virtual environment will be activated. Okay. So now we will be installing the required libraries. First library is Flask, so we'll execute this command, pip install Flask. Okay. And another library was PyMongo, so again we'll install like this, pip install PyMongo. Okay, so we are done with our dependencies. So let's keep the terminal aside for now, and let's create our main Python file. We'll call it app.py. Now let's import everything whatever we need for the development purpose. So we'll write from Flask, import Flask. We need Flask, we need request, we need the JSONify library, and from PyMongo we need just one module, which is called Mongo client. Okay. Now let's just do a print statement, hello. Let's see if it works fine. Okay, it's working fine. That means we don't have any issue with the installation of the libraries. Okay, fine. Now, why I'm getting this select interpreter? Okay. Cool, no problem. Now let's start our development work. So I'll just hide that left pane. So we'll have an app, and it will be the name of our Flask application. Now establish connection with MongoDB. So we'll write client equal to Mongo client, and in argument we have to pass our server name for the MongoDB. So in this case, the host name is localhost 271017. Okay, so we'll write like this, MongoDB : localhost 271017. 017 slash. Okay. Now let's create a database. So from client, we will be creating a database called employee.db, and in MongoDB, in each database, you have to create a collection. Inside collection, we store information in JSON format. So in DB, we'll be creating one collection called employees. Okay, it will not be created immediately. Once we insert our first data, then it will be created. Okay, now whenever we insert any data to MongoDB, for example, here I will show one example. Let's create a database in UI only. We'll call it test, and collection we'll call it test collection. And there let's add a data and let's insert a document. So here I can insert any document, fine, or maybe let's just insert it directly. So with each record, for example, if I insert another thing, with each record one object ID will get created. Okay, so for formalizing it, what we will be doing, that underscore ID function, we will convert the entire object ID into a single string. Okay, then we will keep inserting it. We don't want that object thing to obstruct us from anything if it is doing so. So let's delete the test database. So our first function will be def format employee. So what it will be doing, it will take one employee argument, which will be a type of object of which we store inside MongoDB, and every time when we will call this, it will change that by default underscore ID function into a string. Okay, and then it will return the employee. I'll show you that how it affects when we will first insert our when we will insert our first employee record. Now let's develop the get method. Now what get method said, that if I call API employee, it will return all employee details. If I call API employee with one argument employee ID, maybe 123, it will return details for the employee who has emp ID equal to 123. Cool. So let's write our first request. We'll write app.route, and our endpoint is /API/employee, and in this case we will be using methods only get, and then we will write a function and define that what this particular endpoint is going to do. So first of all, user can enter the employee ID as parameter, or it's up to the user that he wants to enter or not. That's why I'm not mentioning anything here. Okay, so let's call it by default. So request.arguments.get, by this we can get the parameter what user is passing with the endpoint. Okay, now as I told, that user can give or cannot give, it depends on that particular user, what type of data he wants to extract from MongoDB. So we'll write if emp ID, that means if someone is giving emp ID, any employee ID, then the employee details will go to the collection we have already defined on line number 8. Okay, and we will find one, because our employee ID is unique, we will find only one employee ID, right? We'll find only one employee details with one employee ID. So we will be entering our that MQL query, which will be emp ID is the emp ID given by the user. Okay, so this function find one, it will go to MongoDB, it will check all the employees, and it will find out that whose employee ID is matching with this emp ID which is given by the user. Okay, now there can be two cases. our this find one function, it can find some employee with that employee ID. It can find one employee with that employee ID, or it cannot find any employee if the user is giving some wrong employee ID, right? So we have to handle that also. So we'll write if employee, that means if any employee exists, then you return that employee. Okay, and you also return 200 HTTP code. But as I told that by default, when we will return anything from MongoDB, or when we will insert anything from MongoDB, the by default underscore ID, okay, that underscore ID, it has no relation with the employee ID. It is the by default ID, created by MongoDB, and it adds that ID underscore ID with each and every object what we are inserting into MongoDB. Okay, so as I told that we don't want that object element, and that's why we have converted this in string. So what we will do, we'll pass our employee with the method we have defined above on line number 10, def format employee, and then we will simply JSONify our output. Okay, now suppose whatever employee ID user is given, there is no employee in the MongoDB, then it should return error message. So we'll write return JSONify, and it will return an error message. It will return no employee found. Okay, and as it cannot find any employee, so we'll return HTTP 404 code. So our if condition is done, like if user is entering any particular employee ID, but if user is not entering any particular employee ID, it's just hitting that API employee, that means what? We need everything, right? So it should be employees equal to, we'll extract the list because we can have more than one employee, right? So collection dot find. Here we are not mentioning that find one or what. I want everything from that collection, and then it will return. How it will return? It will JSONify, of course, and then it will return each and every employee. Okay, each and every employee, because it's a list, right? And for that we will use the inline for loop. So we'll pass our format employee, we will call our format employee method, and we'll pass one variable emp, where emp in employees, that means in employees, as it's a list, and there we can have more than one employee. So in the list there are multiple elements. Imagine each employee as one single element in a list. Okay, so each object we have to convert this, we have to convert that object ID into a string using the format employee function, right? And after we get that list with all the employees, with all the employee details, after converted with our desired method, then we have to JSONify it, and then we have to show it in the API client. Okay, so we are getting the expected result. After that we will return 200. So our get function is done. Now let's come to the post function. So our post method is easy. So if we call API.employee, then we have to pass some details, like there will be emp id 1, name John, and designation SDE. Okay, then it will insert the record in the database. Okay, so let's write it. So again we'll have one app.route, endpoint should be API employee, and there we will use methods as post. That's it. So let's write the function. We'll call it add employee, or maybe add employees, because we can in one run we can enter more than one employee detail, right? So the data will be request.json. It's a post request, so it will take the data from the JSON. Okay, so if is instance, okay, I think I have written the spelling wrong. If is instance data comma list, it says that, see, if we are entering only one employee details, we can write with the curly braces, right? But if we want to enter multiple employee details, then in JSON we have to bind them in a list format, correct? Like that. So that's why I have first asked our code to check if the data which user is entering, it's a list, then in collection we are inserting more than one data, correct? Because then we will have multiple employees here. So collection dot insert many, and we'll insert the data. But if it is not type of list, if it is a not type of list, then that means we are entering only one data, right? So we'll call the insert one function and we'll just pass the data. That's it. Okay, and then we'll return again our JSONify, and there we will just write a message employee details inserted. Okay, cool. So we are done with our post request. Now let's play with the put request. So it said that, suppose I am entering one, I'll be calling API employee same endpoint, and there as parameter I will pass one emp ID. So emp ID will be maybe 101. Okay, and in the Mongo database we already have, okay, in Mongo database we already have one data with emp ID equal to 101, name is John, and his designation is what I said, SD. This is one existing data. So now if we call put, okay, through this endpoint, then what will happen, it will take one request body for me, and I'll give as designation as QA analyst. Then what our request is going to do, it will find that employee with the 101 employee ID, and as I mentioned designation, it will change the designation, it will update the designation record in the database, and it will change it to QA analyst. So after calling the put request, if we hit get, like fetching the employee, then what we will get, we will get John's details, but the designation will be updated to QA analyst. Okay, so let's write it in code. So app.root, it will be API/employee as always, and the methods will be put, and we'll call it update employee. So of course user will give here the employee ID as parameter, this is like for sure. So request dot arch dot get, we are trying to fetch the emp ID. Okay, and it will also enter, the user will also enter one JSON body, as I said that what data the user wants to update based on that. So if employee ID is given, again, because employee ID, it depends on user, he wants to give or not, but in this case it will not return any result, but it will show him error message. It will ask him that, bro, enter one employee ID, otherwise how can we update? Okay, so if employee ID is given, then our result will be collection. Of course in the collection we are updating, and in this case we cannot update multiple employees. In put request we have to do everything one by one, so we will call update one function. Okay, So what we are going to update, then we have to write MongoDB query language or MQL. So first of all, find out this employee which has the this employee ID which user is given. Okay, this is the first action. Second argument will be you set $set like that we write in MongoDB. You set the data given by the user. So user is given designation change, so it will set the designation change and it will update that employee ID. Okay. Now if result dot matched count, okay, that means what is the meaning of this result dot match count? Suppose user is given 101, so it will be able to find out. Okay, but if user is given 103 and there is no employee with employee ID 103, then user can execute the request but it will not update anything. For that also we should have one indication. So that's why we are entering another if condition. If result is matched out, that means what? Your employee details is updated successfully. So we'll return the message employee, or let's write it properly. We'll have a message here, employee details updated. Okay, okay, we forgot one thing. In the post request, after the insertion is done, okay, and post request after the insertion is done, it should return 201 HTTP code which denotes data created. Okay, and here in this case, because employee details is updated, so we will return HTTP 200 code. Now if the result is not matched out, that means what? There is no employee with that particular ID, right? So it should return a error message saying employee not found, and as it's a not found, we'll return HTTP 404. Okay, now if employee ID is given, do this, but if employee ID is not given corresponding to this if request, will return again, it will be error message. Okay, it will ask provide an emp ID to update the details, and it's a client error, so we will enter HTTP 400 code. Okay, so we are done with the put, get, post and put. Now it's time for the simplest one, which is delete. Now in delete, what will happen? We'll have a existing data. Similar to this, we have John's data, and then if we use delete method over API.employee parameter 101, it is going to delete John's details. That's it. So we'll write app.route and let's pass API/employee, and here the methods will be delete. Okay, so def delete employee, this is the method. So emp id will be, we know, request.args.get from emp id. Now there is no employee ID given, then it should return an error, right? So we will add a condition if emp id, which means if employee ID is given, the result should be collection equal to delete 1, and it should delete that record where emp id is the emp id given by the user. Now if that emp id it really exists, then only it will be able to delete. but it doesn't exist, then it should return an error. So we will be using the same type of condition here what we have used in line number 56. So if result dot, now here we cannot use matched count, right, because we are trying to delete it. So we'll call it if result deleted count. Okay, if it is able to delete, then return JSONify message employee deleted. Okay, and this is a successful request, so we will return http 200. Now if it cannot find the employee, then of course there will be an error which will be employee not found, again not found, so http 404. Now if employee ID is not given, so return JSONify, or what we can do, we can directly copy that same statement and we can paste it here, no need to type again. Okay, now let's run our application. That's how we run the Flask application. I know it's weird to write these things, but okay, let's follow the procedure. Let's turn on the debugger for now. If we get any error, then we will be able to see that what error we are getting. We will not get any, random HTTP code. Okay, so we have developed our employee management system, and let's open terminal and let's, okay, so our server is started. There are no compilation error at least. So MongoDB is also running, okay, in the backend. So let's copy it, copy the host name. Let's open one API client. So today let's use Postman. I like Thunder client, but let's use Postman today. Okay, so now I will do a get request. So our endpoint was API employee. Okay, we'll click on send. See, we don't have anything, but we got a 200 request. Why we are not getting anything? Because there is no employee data present in the database. For that we should enter some data first. So let's call post request. We already know that the endpoint will remain same, so we'll enter a body. So let's enter a body. First we will enter only one employee details. So employee ID is 101. Name, let's call it John. And designation, let's call it SD. Okay, this is how we enter one data, means one employee details. I will click on send. It will tell employee details inserted. Let's call the get request. Let's cut it and keep it on our clipboard. Okay, so one details is inserted, right? And as you can see in the ID we have a simple string. This ID of course we will ignore for now, it's not required. It's a ID created by MongoDB, but this is our details what we have entered, right? Similarly we can go to MongoDB compass. If you cannot see anything, just click on view and click on reload. You will see that one database is created called employee DB, and there we have one collection called employees. If you click on collections, you will be able to see what data we have inserted, right? Okay, let's keep it open. Now here in this case we have inserted only one employee details, but if you want to insert multiple employee details, then simple, we will use a list. So this is John's details, I already copied. Let's call it 2. Instead of John, let's call this Rob, and he is a QA. I want to another employee details. It will be 103. It will be Monica, and she is a automation engineer. Let's enter another employee details, 104. We'll call her Jessica, and Jessica is the intern. Okay, we'll click on send. It will tell employee details inserted. Now let's call the get request and let's see if we're getting all the details. Yeah, so everyone is there in our Mongo database. So we'll go to MongoDB and we can click here to refresh. Once we are inside the collection, we can click there and we can see, okay, so all are updated here. Cool. So now we have tested get and post. Okay, how it works. Okay, let's try another thing, like by entering a parameter. Suppose I want to fetch details for employee 103. So I'll enter a parameter emp id equal to 103. If I click on send, it will show me only Monica's details, nothing else. Cool. Now let's try out put. Okay, so in put we are updating something, right? So let's try out first with, let's see who is 104. I think it was Jessica. So Jessica is intern. Her internship period is over. She is now a full-time employee and she is now SD3. So let's update her designation. Okay, so we'll go put, and I want to update her designation to SD3. Fine. We'll click on send. It will tell employee details updated. Now if I do get for employee ID 104, you'll find her designation is updated to SD3. And if you go to MongoDB, let's refresh it. We'll see for Jessica now the designation is SD3. Cool. And another one is delete. So someone got angry on, I think, John. So John is the guy. So organization decided to fire John. So let's use delete and we'll call it emp id equal to 101 and we'll click on send. Employee deleted. Okay, now if I do get request to 101, it will tell us no employee found because we already removed John. So let's fetch all the employee details. You'll find John is not there. Our count is starting from 102. Similarly, it will get updated here in the MongoDB. So we have only Rob, Monica and Jessica. Okay, so our API is working absolutely fine, and I think today's session was a bit long, but we learned how to create one fully functional employee management API system using MongoDB as database, and it's working absolutely fine. Now we can host it somewhere, and we can give the APIs to some web developers to develop one interactive UI and use it for their need. So that's all for today's video. I will be providing all the important links for downloading MongoDB, Python, and also I'll be providing the source code GitHub repository link on the description. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope you learned something new today. We will meet again with some new content, so stay tuned. Please subscribe to the channel so that you will be notified once I upload a new video on some software engineering stuff. Take care.